Do you need some really quick and usable tips for setting up your classroom? Of course you do, because who doesn't? And guess what? I have some for you. And they're not just my tips. I have some of the best tips from the Brave New Teaching podcast that are from myself, my co-host, and some of our good teacher friends who are friends of the podcast. I want to tell you the highlight reel and then tell you which episodes they're on so that you can go and give it a listen yourself. Let's get started. Okay, so if you are new around here or if you just haven't listened to the podcast before, I am the co-host of the Brave New Teaching, I'm a co-host of the Brave New Teaching podcast, which is, our little tagline is, it's a podcast for educators challenging the status quo. And we are in our third year of episodes, and it is one of my favorite things that I do. My dear friend Amanda from Mud and Ink Teaching and I make up the Brave New Teaching duo, and when I was thinking about different tips for back to school, for planning a classroom and setting it up, I went, you know what? Teachers could probably use these tips in the moment, in the classroom, with some audio. So I'm just going to tell you which episodes that I want you to listen to and like the big takeaways, and then you can go and scrub through and find those things for yourself. So there are 2 episodes, and they're from the second season of the podcast. They are episode 58, which is classroom setup tips for 2021. And then classroom 69, we did a little like podcast exchange with our good friend Betsy Potash, and she actually has a few different friends who have like come on and contributed to this episode, and they are voices that you've definitely heard before on the Brave New Teaching podcast, but they give some really good tips. So let's talk about episode 58 first. The 2 big takeaways that I had from re-listening back to that episode were make the room work for you. Make the room do the work for you. And this was a tip from Amanda, and it's just brilliant. Like, it's a mindset shift, really. Like, my tips were do what matters to you. Figure out what matters to you. I have a video that is a walkthrough. I just filmed it. That's why I'm in the same outfit of my quick classroom planner. Totally free. I'll have it linked down below. But this planner will help you move through the process of figuring out what works for you and what matters to you and what is important to you. Not just like educationally, but for like workflow and making sure that you're super productive and making sure that your students are super productive and all of the different things. What is important to you? What matters to you? And then what can you use that's meaningful and important and incorporate into your space in a way that is intentional and mindful? Yes. And now let's get back to that tip of what works for you and making the room work for you. It means putting systems into place. Amanda has an amazing, brilliant blog post. Amanda has an amazing, brilliant blog post that is all about creating systems and routines at the very first, I think it's like the first 10 days. She also has a course. I forget sometimes what's actually out there and what she and I just talk about, because we also just talk about these things in real life because we're real friends. And you know, you talk to your teacher friends about like teaching stuff, right? Like, it's not just us, right? Anyways, she has a great blog post, though. That's a great place to start, which I will link down below, that talks about creating systems and routines in your practice, but your space is the place that you do that. Making sure that your classroom space is laid out and intentionally crafted in a way that those routines and those systems that you're going to have for your like classroom functioning have a place to go and can actually like move to their greatest potential. That is what we mean by create a space that does the work for you. So those were like the 2 hot tips from episode 58, classroom setup for 2021. My favorite things that I got out of episode 69 were from Betsy herself. Messaging and inclusivity. She is all about messaging and inclusivity in all parts of classroom setup, decor, design, all of the things, and incorporating that into the actual work that she gives to students, the materials, the student-facing stuff. They all incorporate those ideas of messaging and inclusivity. You really do have to hear it from her. So I would say head over to that episode, which I will link down below. But then like the hot takeaway tip is using QR codes in your classroom. We had a couple of different teachers talk about QR codes, and QR codes are a great way to implement those systems and those routines that Amanda talks about actually in both of these episodes. She uses QR codes in her classroom to create a space where students have a little bit more advocacy and can just like do things for themselves and not be like so helpless. It's learned helplessness. They're not actually helpless. They want you to do the stuff for them because they're human beings and they're going to push the envelope and see how far they can get. And so QR codes are a great way to do that. I'm going to be implementing some QR codes in my classroom this year, in different places and different spaces, especially like this little corner of the room. If you're following along with my like classroom setup series that I'm working on right now, if you're not, do it, because I have some cool stuff coming in. This is gonna be my best design yet. But there's gonna be a corner of my room that's a little like reading makerspace chill out corner. I'm just finding that students post-pandemic quarantine learning at home really need more sensory types of things in their immediate space. Yes, taking a break is great, but sometimes you don't need to remove yourself from the space. Sometimes you just need a chill out corner. And it's not just for elementary kids, and it's not just for kids that are in a special day classroom setting. It is for general ed students, special ed students, teachers, and other adults alike. We all need some spaces that help us find center and get back to our foundation, and so that is what I am creating, and QR codes are going to be a part of that. So make sure you follow along to see what I'm talking about. All right, friends. You get on, you get your earbuds, what are they called? Get your headphones charged so that you can listen to these 2 episodes, episode 58, episode 69 of the Brave New Teaching Podcast. I know you're going to just love it, and you're going to keep on listening while you're there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.